Other indexes exist for prices. Obviously, we're not all consumers. Some of us are producing goods and services, so we can use the producer price index. This is looking at the change in prices of products sold as they leave the producer, and this allows us to understand, well, prices along the production process and value chain. We've seen in the past in class that the GDP deflator can be used, and it's defined by the ratio between nominal and real GDP. So it's good, but it includes goods and services that are not bought by households. I mean, the GDP deflator is the ratio of nominal to real GDP, and, well, GDP is the value of production of all goods and services in the economy. And that goes way beyond what households buy. And if we're interested in the household inflation and prices, well, the CPI is really the best indicator today for household purchases. We can also get specific indices. As I've told you before, some prices in the economy go up faster than others. Housing prices, for example, have been going up, and so we have a housing price index. We can also look at utility price indices. Here are some examples. If you go to the website franceinflation.com over here, you get an indicator. You can look at these, and this is, you can see prices of the general price level here is represented by the blue rectangles. Tobacco prices exploding. Obviously, this is not a this is a sin good, if you will, and so we try to discourage the consumption of tobacco. We can see inflation is 425%. Services going up a little bit more than the basket if we just look at the services, and because we've included services in our index as well as other goods, if we look at the manufacturing products, well, we know it's a smaller weight overall, so our average is going to be closer to services than the industrial produced goods and services. Food prices here tracking the general price index, and obviously energy prices quite high, sometimes going down. This is linked to obviously the cost of crude oil, in some cases gas, cost of producing electricity. And this is changing day to day as we and changing all the time as we adopt better energy production methods. Over time, been some surprising things with inflation over time. We can actually have deflation. Deflation is a period when prices are falling in an economy. It does exist. We know that if we go into a recession, we can have a decrease in economic activity. As demand decreases in an economy, prices will fall. We can also have periods of negative inflation, or we can actually have periods of inflation and decreased production in the economy. But we can easily have a decrease in prices, and that's deflation, exact opposite. And we also have periods of hyperinflation. And a very interesting example of hyperinflation would be that of Venezuela, where the price of a cup of delicious Venezuelan coffee rose recently, rising by about 9,000%. So what's happening? And you can actually look this up at the Venezuela Coffee con Leche Index from Bloomberg, which is quite interesting. So what happened in Venezuela? Well, Venezuela is a country in a lot of trouble right now in terms of many items, but inflation, and that's not good for its consumers. The government of Venezuela subsidized payments to citizens to have a better life and whatnot, and these were financed from oil revenues, as Venezuela is an oil-rich nation. Well, at one time in the past, in the near past, price of oil started to drop. And as the price of oil dropped in the markets, nobody needed to have Venezuelan bolivars to buy the Venezuelan oil. So if you're going and you're saying, hey, I want to buy oil, and the price of oil drops, well, you need fewer bolivar to buy the oil from Venezuela because you're buying less oil. So as the price of the oil dropped, we needed less bolivars, and so the demand for bolivars decreased. Now, as we don't need as many, and so the price of the bolivar dropped. And well, what does this mean? That means as the price of the bolivar dropped, for anybody living in Venezuela, the price of imported goods went up. So yeah, I can get more euro, I can get more bolivars for €1, but that means I get fewer euros for 1 bolivar. And if the Venezuelan people want to buy European goods, well, they're going to pay more and more bolivars to get them. To answer this problem, the cost of imported goods rising because, well, the price of the bolivar has dropped. The government decided to print money, which is a way to give people more money to buy the imported goods that are more expensive. But you create another problem, is that, well, you have a bunch more money in the economy. And as there's more money floating around, well, if I know that everybody has more money in their pocket and I am producing and selling goods in Venezuela, if I know my consumers all have more money, well, I will probably increase my prices. And that's exactly what happened. And prices started to rise for local goods and services. Oil prices continued to fall, and the thing just kept going. And as time went on, foreign investors started to get out of Venezuela. Prices continued to rise even more. The government continued to respond by printing even more money. Consumers eventually were restricted from buying foreign currency because this was a way they felt they could stop this process of out of control inflation. Well, it just created a secondary market, a black market for foreign currency, making matters even worse. So it's been a bad time for Venezuela. And through this very simple example of hyperinflation, you can see the difficulties it causes on society. You literally have people walking around with tons and tons of paper in the form, the money that's in the form of paper. The paper money is worthless. In fact, it's more valuable and it's a better use than buying toilet paper. It's better to use, in some cases, the Bolivar printed bill as toilet paper rather than buying a roll of toilet paper. It's less expensive. Problems with inflation. Well, what's the problem? We have inflation. Suppose our wages keep up. Yeah, we can live with inflation. There'll be menu costs. Menu costs are the costs of changing prices. Literally, if you go to a restaurant and prices are rising all the time, you can imagine that you have to destroy the menu, you have to change the prices, you have a lot of things you have to physically change over time. And this is a cost in terms of time spent reprinting documents, things like that. But overall, if wages keep up, we should be okay. And this is why we look at the real wage rate and not the nominal wage rate. But what happens if they don't keep up? Well, we can have problems. And some of the problems could be in situations where you're holding a lot of cash. Imagine that you have cash stuffed under your bed and it's not in the bank, or it's in the bank in a checking account. Prices can rise, and as prices rise, the money you've stuffed under your mattress or kept in your cash account can buy fewer and fewer goods. So holding cash during times of high inflation is not a great idea. If you have financial investments where the nominal return does not keep up with inflation, imagine you've purchased or you've invested in an investment, maybe a bond, that gives a fixed rate of return over a period of time. And again, as inflation rises, your real rate of interest would be the nominal rate less inflation, so the rate you make is getting smaller and smaller. You're earning interest, but the interest you're earning can buy you less and less goods and services. So that's not that great. Wages can lag behind inflation. Wages, as we've seen in the past session on unemployment, can be quite sticky. And wages have a hard time going down, but wages also can't go up a lot. We tend to not adjust wages a lot. Minimum wages are not adjusted all the time. And wages in general are not that fluid. They're not that flexible. So because we're only adjusting wages once or twice a year, and even less, because some wages are not indexed or connected to inflation, well, inflation will hurt us. The wages just don't keep up. If you're a retiree receiving a fixed pension, many pensions are not adjusted appropriately for inflation. So you may have a pension, it gives you a certain amount of money every year, but if prices are rising and you're retired and you have a fixed pension every year or every month, that's not good for you. And again, you will hurt. And lastly, if you pay income taxes, in most countries where income taxes exist, the marginal rate, the rate of taxation you pay on a certain amount of money, or the next 1,000 euros or next 100 euros, that marginal rate is fixed in brackets. So it increases as your income increases. And so you could actually, with raising inflation, your wages will go up. But as the wages go up with inflation, you'll be pushed into a higher tax rate if the rates are not adjusted for inflation. And this is all dependent upon the system.